Hello, welcome to the Week in Review, the program where we pull back the curtain on the week's biggest stories, unpack the headlines and ask the questions that matter. I am Mahmoud Mboj and I have in the studio here today my colleague Ansumane Eso Nyasi. He's also the presenter of the Current Affairs program in Wolof. How.
Right.
So, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Mr. Mboj. It's a pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. That's it. As always, we've lined up 10 of the week's defining moments, from tragedy and triumph to policy and politics. Coming up this week, fresh revelations in the Gambia's AKI crisis. 4 cough syrups were found to be contaminated. What does the Medicines Control Agency's latest disclosure mean for accountability and public safety? Also, National Assembly members wrap up a flurry of reports at the National Assembly, with the Public Accounts and Finance Committee and others delivering their findings. We'll track the key recommendations. In election news, a new electoral blueprint has been validated as the 2026 polls loom. Is it a bold step forward? We'll discuss. Meanwhile, a proud moment for Gambian heritage. Janjambure earns UNESCO World Heritage recognition. We'll reflect on its history and what this status could unlock for the island town. And the football world mourns as Portugal and Liverpool forward Jota tragically dies in a car crash. It's been a week of reckoning, reflection, and recognition, and we're here to make sense of it all. To our next first story. It was perhaps one of the darkest chapters in recent public health memory. Dozens of Gambian children lost their lives after taking contaminated cough syrup. So dramatic testimony at the Banjul High Court really reignited troubling questions about regulation, accountability, and whether lives could have been saved. Let's just take a look.
Dr. Esa Marina confirmed that 4 cough syrups manufactured by India's Maiden pharmaceutical company and imported into the Gambia by Atlantic Pharmaceutical Company were found to be contaminated after laboratory test. The case was brought by families of 19 children who allegedly died from acute kidney injury after taking the syrups. They are suing the Medicines Control Agency, Ministry of Health, the Attorney General, Atlantic Pharmaceuticals, and the Indian drug maker.
Exactly. So, this case sort of brings up sort of a few themes. First, there was the confirmation from the MCA. That was for the first time, really, that 4 brands, at least, of cough syrup were contaminated. Then, of course, the first question you're going to have to ask is that, what does that say about the quality of our checks in place before medicines sort of reach our shelves and hospitals?
So I think it's basically a confirmation that what most of us have feared all along, that really there are serious gaps as far as our checks and even oversight is concerned. The MCA, I know, occasionally they would complain of a lack of resources here and there, but what is it that the council is actually doing? What mechanism do they have in place to ensure that they're able to perform their oversight functions in the manner that it is expected? I know they do have officers, at all entry points, which is okay, but how effective is that? Because these drugs obviously didn't fall from the sky. They must have passed through some entry to come into the country. And then there was denial here and there, but this is the first time we're having a confirmation in court that, well, actually, we did discover that at least 4 brands were contaminated. But for me, I think it shows that more work needs to be done. What they're doing since discovering this, in fact, I'm not sure when they actually discovered this, because that isn't clear. He hasn't mentioned in court at what time exactly did they discover that, okay, these 4 brands are contaminated out of the lot we have. But he did say they can confirm that now. Whatever the case is, I think it raises more concern. Yeah.
And wasn't it really WHO that really flagged
Right.
the high levels of toxicity really in certain syrups? So, and this is it. Another aspect is that the acting Director General, or is he Executive General? Well, he said that as late as December 2022, he couldn't confirm how many of these contaminated syrups had been retrieved. So
that's scary.
That's absolutely, how concerning is that really about our recall system?
Yeah.
And they're still really appealing to people, aren't they?
I mean,
so until now, we're still appealing, so we're not really sure how much of this has been
I think the fact that they're still appealing to me makes it even more scary, because it you know, I'm here thinking, oh, maybe you have some of these contaminated drugs lying somewhere in someone's house, and there's a high possibility they may be giving it to their children. And I really don't think they've been very effective in recalling these medicines, because I haven't heard them talk about it anywhere in the media. Really haven't heard anyone mention it as well until he said it. Now they may be doing it, I'm not sure, but I haven't heard it. And really, I think for me, what this also shows is that, you know, you're talking public safety here, right? And especially for children who are very vulnerable, having them consume contaminated drugs really could be fatal, as we've seen, you know, in the cases we've had. And this is why they're in court today. So I think it raises more concern, like I said earlier, and I don't really understand how they go about recalling, but the fact that he's appealing, or they're appealing to the public, you know, to really come forward, and, you know, it's for me very scary. And
that's it.
Yeah,
and what
just thinking about it alone really is very scary.
Yes, and perhaps what makes it even scarier was when the plaintiff's lawyer, Lubna Faraj, said that as late as December 2022, they had prescribed one of these lethal cough syrups, and the person died from it. So if the hospital itself, as it were, had sort of adapted, changed ways, you know, removed, as it were, those things from the shelves, what chance for others? You know, it was just quite staggering. If proven, we do not know yet. It's still, the case is still going on. That was just something that was said. It will be interesting to know what the judge says about this. But quite extraordinary, wouldn't you say, really?
Indeed, quite extraordinary. I mean, he did deny that they do not have any such information as at the time he was in court. But for me, I think the fact that, you know, you have the lawyer saying that, we're talking the EFSTH here. It's the main referral hospital in this country, the biggest we have. So if you have the EFSTH where you would expect, you know, more coordination, more safety measures, you know, the most experience, you know, of health, you know, senior health officials in there. If you could have the EFSTH allegedly still issuing these medicines or giving it out to children, I think for me, you know, this whole case is quite concerning. And just thinking about it alone, like I said, it's very, very scary. Whether true or not, we do not know, but this is what is being alleged in court.
Exactly.
And I am really hoping that they wouldn't only stop at denying it because they haven't had the information yet, but that they would do something about it.
Yes, and this is it. Ultimately, the plaintiffs, they said that the MCA failed in its duty. So then I asked the question, what does that mean? If proven afterwards, should heads roll, or are we facing a wider, broader, systemic sort of healthcare governance issues? In which case, when you change personnel, because the structure is such as what it is, whoever comes in will really continue to do, you know what I mean? So this is it, personnel or structures? What do you...
I think it's both for me. Whoever, because remember, you have people who are charged with these responsibilities. Now, if they haven't done their jobs right, you know, especially in terms of ensuring safety and efficacy of medicines that come into this country, if I believe if they had done their work right, maybe you wouldn't even have had up to 4 brands that are contaminated in the market. Maybe with one and then it's flagged, you would say, oh, we discovered one, and that is understandable. But 4, for me, I think it shows clearly, that someone somewhere didn't do their job. And so, yes, for me, it goes both ways. Head should roll, that's one. But how do we ensure that these things don't happen again? It goes down to the institution. There has to, you mentioned governance. Absolutely. The structures really have to change. We're not doing something right. And so we have to look at what is it in there, within the system, that is not going right, and fix it.
Absolutely. So with me, even one death is a tragedy.
Indeed.
But what happened to Maiden pharmaceuticals in India?
Yeah.
What the Indian government and what the regulators in there did. First, there was this launch. They launched a probe.
Yeah.
And that was the state regulatory body also visited one of the factories and found that 10, 12, they had violated 10 or 12 good practice regulations in place. And so they halted productions, didn't they?
Yes.
Even though the Indian government tried to deny any culpability on their part. But afterwards, it brought in something quite interesting, kind of export-specific testing and certification.
Right.
So it had made some difference because previously there had been lax with drugs that are going to be exported, stuff like that. But now, at least from this, they are changing their systems. So you would want similar change within our system here, isn't it?
Remember, I think we are their biggest market, right? Most of the medicine they produce comes to Africa.
Yes.
And Gambia, as we know, we do not produce any medicine. Yes. Almost everything we consume within our health system, just like it is for us in terms of food, is imported. So I think we need that. There has to be those, accountability measures in place to ensure that whatever is coming into this country in terms of medicine is well checked. And they have to be sure that this is safe and it is efficacious. But also, you have to be able to know, for example, if you bring in a certain brand and then you discover that it is contaminated, if you haven't had any records, you haven't had any, well-structured system in place, you wouldn't even know the volume that is in the market. You wouldn't even know. And so for me, I think this is what is happening to us now, because we lack those things. You have the MCA still appealing to the public to help them recall these medicines. Mm-hmm. So you cannot even tell how much we have out there, which to me, I think, is quite concerning.
You're absolutely correct. But we will see where this court case ends. It's a civil suit, of course, not a criminal one. So we will see how it goes. We'll be keeping a close eye on it. Thank you very much, Eso. Now to our next story. Parliament was in session, and so was accountability. The National Assembly members really shone the spotlight on public finances, environmental risks, and national policy with a flurry of oversight reports demanding answers. Let's just take a look.
The committee noted that 20 environments amounting to 79,058,793 were made within and across sectors to create new posts contrary to financial regulations. And on that, the committee recommends that the Ministry of Finance must not make or approve any environment for the creation of any new post that was not part of the approved manpower budget, in line with the intent and spirit of Section 29(8) of the Public Finance Act 2014.
We will approve budgets here, and at the end of the day, Minister has the power to vary the budget anyhow he likes. These are some of the things that is happening.
Sadly, I've seen a land by the BCC that was leased for 2 million in the pretext to be sold for 15 million. I believe by now the IGP or other people should initiate arrest the CEO of Banjul City Council. Because even the local council have highlighted, and again, in the report, you can see what is happening there. So arrests should be done.
I think for councils, I don't know whether they are an island or they are a kingdom of their own, but I think something must be done on councils.
We've seen a lot of environments that are not approved by the minister himself. So are you telling me now the PS or a director can approve environments? If that is the showcase, I blame committee chairman.
Quite extraordinary there. How many, like 4, 5
Yeah.
National Assembly members? First we had Alaji Dabo, he's the chair of FPAC, and we had Lamin Sise, Jibimbalo, Sekuba, and Biram So. Yeah. How serious is public finance management really in this country? They all sort of, we're not happy at all, to say the least.
Interestingly, they're from different sides of the divide.
Absolutely.
You know? That for me, that's what really caught my attention.
Yeah.
You know, this is, I think, for me, one of the most talked about issues in Gambia right now. Issues of public finance management. You look across our public institutions. Even if you go through audit reports when they are published, you know, for me it amazes me why, you know, we keep having this conversation. In fact, year in, year out. I think by now, if the will is there, most of these things should have been addressed. I mean, there are some very salient issues, quite serious ones, like the issue of ministers, you know, having that free will to do whatever they want with the finances, you know, and even directors, you know, even directors being able to do whatever they want with public finances, and not much is being done to ensure that these monies are accounted for. I think for me, it's quite serious, and the fact that even you have the NAMs complaining about it, you know, it tells you that even the National Assembly itself somehow feels, you know what, maybe we're not doing enough as a country, you know, in general, because they didn't mention only central government. They even talked about local councils, right? So it's more like a general problem, but how do we fix that?
Absolutely, and even the speaker.
Yes.
I mean, his contribution towards this was...
He was visibly...
It was really staggering. It was unbelievable.
Indeed.
He talked about the ghost workers. You know, he mentioned that. And he also talked about the idea that you had non-staff loans that were unpaid. Non-staff loans, that was interesting. That. And then he said something else, really, that when we return next time, we'll be facing the same issues.
Right.
That was the most staggering statement that he made. So does it seem as if we cannot do anything about it?
Look, just to add to that, a few days ago, the Minister for Public Service was in Parliament as well, and he made, you know, this very extraordinary revelation. He said that they had paid about 23 million, you know, to unverified staff. I don't understand that. I really I'm still struggling to understand what he means by unverified staff.
Checks cancelled.
Yet
withdrawn.
And then out of the 23 million, they were only able to recover 2 million. I mean, look, I think for me it all comes down to the will, you know, to put an end to this, or at least to put in place, you know, mechanisms or some accountability or governance mechanisms that would ensure that even whereas things like this would happen, it wouldn't be at the scale that it is happening now, or at least you would be able to address it as soon as you detect that this has happened. Because it's one thing to have public funds being disbursed, and then you notice that, oh, something isn't right in there, yet you're struggling to recover the monies. I mean, if there's a will, those monies would be recovered if the will is there, because whoever goes to the bank to withdraw money, your details are taken, so they can trace it out. I don't understand. I really struggle to understand, when I heard him say, oh, we were only able to recover 2 million. So it's like the country is losing about, 21 million? And that's quite a substantial amount.
That's it. So here you have this parliamentary oversight, which absolutely you must have. But again, it appears as if we need a deeper systemic reform.
Of course.
So this is the key. Can you see it coming? I mean, we've been struggling with this because we've had quite a few reports from the National Assembly exposing this financial mismanagement in many of these institutions, but it keeps repeating.
Right.
I suspect, because we've not been able to do much, or whatever we're doing, we haven't seen the effect yet.
So Parliament, I think, is making an effort to lead, those efforts to ensure that these things, are addressed once and for all, by issuing a 30-day ultimatum to the executive to say, you must act on this, you must, not only to respond, but to take action to ensure that this is corrected. But I think for me, the problem we have as regards to accountability, in dealing with public funds is the will, really, the will to account for whatever is happening. Because if someone, is said to have, somehow used public funds, for personal gain or, for whatever reason that it isn't meant for, they should be able to account for it, but not only account for it, but they should be penalized according to law. If I take public funds, let's say millions, because we're talking millions here, I should be taken before the law because I need to pay it. It is public funds. Now, you listen to central government, the message has always been, oh, we are against corruption. You go to the local councils, we are against corruption. But with all these reports that are coming out, you realize it's more like a disease, that is all over our public institutions. But until we saw that strong will and go beyond just rhetoric, just saying, oh, you know what, we will fight against corruption, we don't want corruption here and there, you must be willing to do something about it, and you have to be seen to be doing something about it.
So talk is cheap. Anybody can do it. But then after the 30-day ultimatum, what realistic options are out there for the National Assembly? What can they do?
Well,
if, in case nothing happens, really, what is it that they can do really, realistically? That is really the issue.
Well, I think, maybe to ensure that whoever is responsible, if there is proof, the person is prosecuted. But since, the institutions...
But that's not up to them,
that is not up to,
maybe
exactly.
the Ministry of Justice.
And this is why it is, and this is why they're asking the ministry to ensure that they do what is right. So if the ministry doesn't, I don't think there would be much they can do about it, than to just continue talking about it. Unless we change, the manner in which public funds are handled, especially at the institutional levels, maybe come up with some form of legislation or even some policy to say, you know what, from now onwards, this is the person, that may, be legally given the authority to do this and this and this with public funds, and not just having everyone having access to it. Like the other NAM raised the issue of even directors having access to public funds and just disposing it anyhow. So until we have those structures in place, I think we'll continue to deal with the same problem.
Thank you very much. So now to our next story. A high-profile murder trial, intelligence claims, missing evidence. As the Usman Bujang case resumes, the search for truth moves from rumor to testimony. Let's just listen to this.
Counsel Lamin J. Dabo, representing the first accused, Usman Bujang, argued that military officer Omar S. Jallo had given a statement as an eyewitness to the joint investigation team, and that it is crucial for him to provide the same testimony before the court. Counsel Dabo's application was not opposed by Director of Public Prosecutions, A.M. Yusuf, who confirmed that Officer Jallo had been shortlisted as a prosecution state witness. Similarly, Counsel Adama Silla, representing the second accused, Ami Bojang, did not object to Dabo's submission. The trial judge approved Defense Counsel Dabo's application ordering Omar S. Jallow, a military officer attached to the GAF training school, to appear and testify truthfully on the next adjourned date.
Absolutely. Yeah. One wonders how significant, as it were, this witness will be in this case. Quite interesting, isn't it, Antamana? Because here we've had all sorts of people, 3 government officials were subpoenaed to appear. Even QTV, Kirfatu were also asked to submit footage. Right. It's been quite an interesting case, the way it's been unfolding.
Yeah, look, I have to say, as like everyone else, when the case started, you know, I did not foresee that it would take such a turn, really, because of some of the information we had, you know, been told by some very senior government officials, including even from within the police, you know, at the time that this alleged, you know, killer was arrested.
The PIU, right? 2 of them killed, 1 of them injured.
Yeah. But then, so they've been invited to court to come and testify. Interestingly, you mentioned QTV and other media houses having to go there and submit recordings of the press conference that they held in the aftermath of the incident. But then, I mean, they went to court, and most of the things they said during the press conference, they went to court and they were like, oh, I either cannot recall, or I have forgotten if I made any such statement. I'm not sure I made such statement. And that was why the court, you know, had to ask these media houses who were present, you know, at that press conference to, you know, share with the court, I mean, the recordings.
The footage, of course, yes.
You know, of that press conference. Yep. And they had to, you know, play, you know, in court, those video recordings in court for everyone to see and to listen to. And quite extraordinary stuff. You have the first witness, the government spokesperson, saying, well, you know, I don't recall me saying certain things, or even if I did whatever I must have said, it's from the police. When asked who from the police, he couldn't identify who exactly told him. And I think for me, statements like that, they throw a lot of, you know, questions around credibility of whatever information was shared, but also how truthful was the information. And so remember, at the time, I still remember that all these 3 officials who were invited to court have made, you know, contradictory statements, really, as regards to the accused person. And so it's quite interesting what we're hearing now in court. This soldier, I think for me, is going to be the most consequential witness in all of this trial now. We've heard from other state witnesses. You know, I recall them bringing a gun allegedly used by the shooter, the fingerprints either didn't show or didn't match. The shirt they brought to court, I remember that as well. It didn't fit him. The shoe they brought, it didn't fit him. So there's a lot of things really about this case that what my observation, or really I'm thinking now, that maybe they shouldn't have gone about either one organizing even that press conference in the first place, or also making some of those statements they made at the time, given how premature it was, because this was a day or 2 after the incident. And I think maybe they should have allowed the police to exhaust their investigation before, and then come out with one formal version of what actually happened, then have, you know, a press conference organized where investigations were still on, and you have people making contradictory statements about the same incident, the same individual, and now we see things, how the way things are playing out in court. Now, my fear really is that, well, maybe it's too early to say now, but with the way things are going in court, with what we're witnessing in court, I'm afraid it would be really very difficult from what we've seen so far. Anyway, we'll leave it at that.
Absolutely, because we are lay people, really. Yeah. So with the law and court procedures and proceedings to go. Yeah. But just one last thing. And Mr. Jeng, the National Security Advisor, said that he based his Casamas rebel claim, wasn't it? He made that statement on verbal intelligence. So one wonders why this sort of unverified, as it were, characterizations should find itself in public discourse.
Yeah, I couldn't believe it when I heard that too. I think the government spokesperson also made a similar claim in court. You know, for given their positions, you know, you're talking about National Security Advisor and government spokesperson. These are very, very sensitive positions. And one would expect that whatever information is being given to them, one would be verified information, credible, like quite very factual.
Before you go to the public.
Exactly. But also how they can take such information without verifying it and then transmit it to the public. I think for me, I don't know, it raises a lot of questions, you know, but it has more to do with, okay, it's not just about being experienced, but there are competence questions in there. There's also questions of, you know, one being really very aware of what kind of information and situation you're dealing with, you know, whether they were just carried away by, you know, events at the time. But I think really they should be very, very careful with information like that. Remember, we were talking about 2 lives lost at the time.
Absolutely.
And an alleged shooter who was on the run and captured the night before. The fact that you have them sharing unverified information, for me, yeah,
absolutely. We'll be following this case. To our next story, UN Women, that's one of the entities of the UN, marked its 50th anniversary, and they used the occasion to remind the world that gender equality gains are now under threat. Let's just take a look and listen.
UN Women marked its 15th anniversary with a strong warning: gains in gender equality are starting to erode. A recent UN report shows nearly 1 in 4 countries is seeing a reversal in women's rights. The agency warns that hard-won progress is at risk without urgent global action and renewed investment. UN Women's 2025 assessment, based on data from over 150 national reports, finds that gender equality progress is stalling, and in some cases reversing. The data shows a 60% rise in public concern about the lack of progress. Nearly 25% of countries are now experiencing active resistance to women's rights.
That's it. So let's bring it closer to home. We understand that here we have 8.6% of parliamentarians, women, holding what? How many ministerial posts held by women? 3, I don't know, something like that.
Yeah.
What explains this persistent underrepresentation?
I mean, I think for me, like I would always say, so we have to also understand Gambian society. I think for as long as I can remember, there's this cultural belief that women are not meant to be leaders. You know, it's for men to always lead. But I think also to change this, you know, women in Gambia are doing amazingly well. They're doing very well. But I think we need more women really, you know, coming forward to take charge, you know, to also, so that, you know what, we are not only interested, but we are competent enough to equally, you know, do our part, to equally participate in national development. You look at our institutions in general, our public institutions. Most of these leadership positions are occupied by men. The highest you would have for women would be maybe deputy or even some senior managerial position, but mostly led by men. Not that you don't have, you know, competent women who can man those positions, but I think it's also down to the women as well. You look at our politics in general, hardly do you see a woman, when? Until 2016.
Because the system wouldn't allow them, it's not very accommodative.
Right.
You know what I mean? In many ways, given what you've just said, the norms.
The norms,
we have
right.
these norms,
Right.
so that is not very accommodative, if you like, of women coming in. But this is it. Just to move the argument forward. That kind of that worldview, as it were, that view about gender roles, I think I can find it all over the continent.
Right.
But when I go to Rwanda and see what Kigali is doing, the number of women they have in the parliament. So political leadership can change it.
That's right. That's very true. You mentioned cabinet earlier. Well, we have less women in there now, about 3. And I think for me that is something we need to look at. Environment, gender, and which one again? MOPSE, right? Yeah. So I think that is something we need to look at. You go to parliament, same situation. Of the 5, 2 are nominated, right? So I think women should also come forward and express interest in elective positions. I think that could help change, because if you're talking the political leadership taking the lead, I think for me, so long you have men leading, this would continue. But imagine a situation where you have a female president or even a female speaker in parliament. I think for me, it could help drive that conversation and would serve as a motivation for women as well.
So I have to say this, I think we've turned politics into a kind of wrestling match, and women just don't want to wrestle.
Nah.
Let's go on to our next story. Well, with 2026 on the horizon, there's the elections, the electoral cycle, of course. The electoral body sort of is not waiting for the campaign season. So it's charting the rules, as it were, refining the strategy and gathering stakeholders to shape how the next elections will be run. Let's just take a look and listen.
The importance of this validation cannot be overemphasized, because every institution, you must have a strategic plan. And the IEC organizing this at this time cannot come at a better time than right now. So this is the place where at least they will make their plans, their activity plans, and so on. And that will help them to work on the electoral system and make us have an election that is credible and worth of a recommendation.
Absolutely. So very quickly, when I saw that news story, I thought, I wonder how the strategic plan, the next 5 years, is different from the one we had before. And when you look at the landscape, what really do we need to improve when it comes to elections? How do you see it?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think it's more to do with the operations of the commission, especially during the electoral cycle, from voter registration to even the voting process itself, and even post-voting, than how they go about doing their work as an institution. They always talk about, challenges, operational challenges, a lack of certain resources here and there. So if the strategic plan is to address that, that's fine with me. But otherwise, I don't know what exactly is it that this strategy seeks to address. Because you talk about credibility or fairness of our elections. There's always been that general belief that our elections, are mostly very credible and fair. I think there's this general consensus on that. So,
particularly on the Barrow.
On the Barrow, yes.
Because on the Jammeh there were certain question marks.
Right. So for me, I think the focus should be more on how do we, address those operational challenges that the Commission is dealing with, and I would want to know how this strategy would impact the Commission's operations, going into 2026.
That's it. Quickly, the marble system, marble or paper. So we tend to think that because of the simplicity of it, it was sort of like cheat-proof kind of thing. But not necessarily so.
Right.
People do tell us that. And even when it comes to auditing, You see, with paper ballot, you can go back and count. With this marble, once the counting is done,
that's it.
That's it.
Yeah.
So the auditing deficiencies, as it were, is quite extraordinary here. Maybe this is the sort of thing that they will want to address.
Yeah, I mean, I hope it would address some of these things you've highlighted, because it will help to really strengthen public trust in the Commission, but also in our elections, which I think for me is very important. It would help to ensure that people have faith in the Commission, but also it wouldn't really raise questions of credibility. And once you don't have, that, during elections, of course, everyone would be in a safe place, because otherwise we know how, tense election periods could be. So once you have such questions being raised, especially with more people, like members of the public, with more people really asking these questions, it really raises a lot of credibility questions. And then, it's room for
improvement.
For trouble, yeah.
And somebody said to me the other day that what we do, we think that we call it the secret ballot. You are in this enclosure by yourself. Nobody can see you do anything. But not necessarily. So we see in the West that people can quite clearly see the boxes where you're putting your in. Secret ballot really means that I do not know the party you vote for. But not necessarily that I cannot see you voting.
Yeah, that's nice.
Thank you very much.
That's true.
Thank you very much. So now, well, we've reached halfway point of our program.
Indeed.
We'll take a short commercial break.
At Ajib Bank, we are more than banking. We build bridges that connect you to pivotal services every day. Do you have government bills to pay to the Gambia Revenue Authority, Comfort, KMC, or the Accountant General's Department? We've got you covered. From payment of customs and domestic taxes to GRA, payment of number plate and vehicle ownership transfer to Comfort, payment of property rates and business license fee to KMC, and payment of MR passport, business registration, fishing license, land fees, sale of assets, lease application, development permits, quarrying royalties, gravel and sand, mining royalties, and a host of other revenue lines to the Accountant General's Department. Walk into any of our branches nationwide and make your payments hassle-free. Either in person or online. Simple, secure, and immediate. With Ajib Bank, there is no need to worry about government bill payments for your vehicles, taxes, licenses, business registration, and any other revenue line. Ajib Bank, passionate about your investment. We've got you covered. Ajib Bank, your investment partner.
Oh, welcome back to the Weekend Review. I've got as my guest today that we sort of sink our teeth in some of these stories. I've got Usman Esonyasi. Cheers, Usman, for being with me today. Well, we've done 5 stories already, 5 to go. And the next one, a new chapter has opened in our country's service story, the Civil Service University, which was previously MDI. Well, in partnership with the Ghana Institute of Management and Public Administration, they've introduced a master's program. Let's just listen to this.
It's an indisputable fact that human resources of a nation constitute the most precious asset of that nation. This means that no country can make any meaningful economic progress without developing the knowledge, skills, and capabilities of its citizens to manage the available resources.
That's it. Is that a game changer, as it were, when it comes to civil service reform? Part of it, really, the training is really part of it all. Is it a game changer there with this master's program?
Well, I want to believe it will be. I was lucky to have covered, when the agreement was being signed, I was lucky to have covered that event. And really, I think, this is going to help a lot in ensuring that that reform that we've all been yearning for within our public service, the civil service in particular, becomes a reality. I know we've always look, since the change in 2017, one of the things that people talk about, a lot is the need for reform, in our civil service. And so to have a university or a higher learning institution dedicated to training civil servants, I think for me it will go a long way, really, in ensuring that we get the desired results as far as our civil service is concerned.
That's it here, of course, the technical competence
Yes.
in how to do administration and all of that. Yeah. That's one thing. But again, how do you sort of make them depoliticized, as it were? How do you make them sort of like serve the state, as it were, but not the government of the day, isn't it? That's the problem we're facing now.
This is quite an interesting point that you're raising, because I know we have this problem all over Africa, not just in Gambia.
Of course.
If you're within the civil service and maybe you're working under a certain ruling government, and maybe the politician wants this, but professionally this is how it's supposed to be done. If you insist on doing it the way it is supposed to be done, you might be seen as undermining the government, and by government they're talking ruling party. So it has to do with our orientation as well. So hopefully, the coming of this university would help change that. And I think once we have, that change in orientation, to understand that as a civil servant, you're serving the state and not the ruling party. If you're able to differentiate these two, I think, as a country, we'll get to really benefit a lot from that.
That's the key, isn't it? Thank you very much there. So now to our next story. It is said that justice delayed is justice denied. So we understand that with our judiciary, we have such a huge backlog of cases. So a new batch of trained mediators promises to ease the burden. Let's just take a look and listen.
You now stand as bridges between conflict and resolution, between delay and progress. The judiciary places great trust in you, and I'm confident that you will serve with humility, with integrity, and with an unwavering commitment to justice. You will not, of course, be alone. Mediation is a well-established African practice for dispute resolution, and the Gambia is no exception.
The Gambia is no exception. Interesting there. They're sort of coming up with all sorts of ideas, really, it seems here, so that we can take care of the backlog, but more generally, to create a fast, efficient judicial system.
So I covered this one. They're about 23 in number, and they've been selected from different diverse professional backgrounds. You've got lawyers in there, you've got some from the CSOs, some from the parliament, and even within the judiciary. I think for me this is good. Not only with the backlog of cases you mentioned, but even ensuring that, if you're able to address, like amicably resolve a problem before it even reaches court, I think for me that in itself is a win. And naturally as Africans, this has been the way we've always resolved our issues. Whenever there are problems, they would say, let's sit over it, let's talk. Let's dialogue. So to have the courts also, employing such strategy, using that, I think it will help, because now you're dealing with less resources, it's less, costly, but also I think it is good that you have more people trained. I know this, you would need help, obviously, because they had to partner with the American Mediators Academy, to help make this possible, and it can take quite some time before you complete a course. But I think for me this is very important, and I think it's highly commendable.
That's it, and the trick is to know what kind of cases to send over there, isn't it? Yeah. Thank you very much there, So now to our next story. In our age it is said that data is power, or some would say the new oil. In Gambia, we've been taking steps really, to keep up. So there's a new national data policy, and there's a new bold vision for digital transformation. Let's just take a look and listen.
Gambia is the first country to reach this stage of developing its draft national data policy as part of the African Union Technical Assistance Program. This framework that is subject of discussion today identifies key enablers as well, namely addressing the digital skills deficit, digital infrastructure deficit, and also to enhance the harmonization of policy and regulatory framework.
That's it. It seems that we are leading the way here. She's a representative from the African Union Commission. I put this deliberately in here because this is really the future. We must start preparing for it now. Policies, legislation, training, and all sorts of things. This really leads to the future. And the future is here, as it were, isn't it?
So it's good we have a data policy. I really hope that, you know, and wish that they would expedite this process to make it, you know, happen as soon as possible. We know data has always been a problem here. If you need certain data, or even the way we store data, you know, even the way we manage data, it's been a problem.
Collecting
you know,
it in the
collecting,
first place.
exactly, from collecting to storing it to managing it, it's been a problem, even especially within our public institutions. And so to have a data that would provide that guide, you know, that, okay, this is how, you know, you're supposed to go about it. I think for me that is very, very, very important, and it's a commendable move. However, I also would hope that it would not be one of those, you know, documents we would, you know, initiate and then have it packed somewhere to collect dust. You know, we have to make it a working document, and by that I mean to ensure that the objectives for which this document, you know, was developed for, you know, is achieved. Implementing it.
That's the usual bogeyman. Yeah. Now to our penultimate story, Janjambure, you know, is gone from the banks of the river Gambia to the global stage. Now it's been added to, it has been given a UNESCO heritage recognition. Let's just listen.
The call you know, came out late last year, and we work, you know, diligently here at the National Center for Arts and Culture to file in an application for Makati. And now we did that. We did the technical part, and the community, the chief, you know, the organizing committee of the Kankorong Festival also, you know, give us supporting, you know, I mean documents.
Absolutely, there. They've called it what? There's a name for it. The global sites. There's a network.
Yeah.
As it were, of certain historical sites that are connected to the slavery.
Yes.
That's it. So it has got that. It's been given that status. Right. Not quite a UNESCO heritage site, but perhaps a step below that. Afterwards, you come up. Yeah, quite a move. Many potential advantages here.
Indeed. I think. Look. So the first time I went to Janjambure, from when I got to some of these sites, especially the old slave market, the first thing that caught my attention was how dilapidated the structures there were, and I could see not much being done, you know, to maintain those structures, you know, for longevity purposes. Because otherwise, there will come a time when all of those things, we would lose them. And these are very, very valuable historical sites. So to have Janjambure being recognized, you know, and being inducted basically into such an organization, I think for me is very important.
There are only 28 sites.
Yeah.
Within this sort of select group.
So who knows? There could be some benefits to come. It might come with some benefits. Maybe even support to help, you know, preserve those sites, possibly. Well, and I would assume that, you know, I'd want to believe that maybe that is one of the benefits to
and
be
actually,
part of this.
we actually asked Hasum Sise, and he said, of course, you're going to have access to global cultural networks.
Yeah.
You'll have that. Restoration funding. Earlier on, you talked about how dilapidated that place is. So there's that possibility. And educational collaborations. That could be training. So all sorts of things could emerge from this. Thank you very much. So now we go on to our final story. If I can find it.
Yeah, it's the Diogo Jota story.
Absolutely unbelievable, isn't it? The Liverpool and Portugal star died at the age of 28 in a car accident in Spain. Let's just take a look and listen.
In the accident which claimed their lives in Spain, the car in which the brothers were travelling was burnt beyond recognition. Spanish police say the car left the road due to a tyre blowout while overtaking another car at 12:30 a.m. on Thursday. Liverpool issued a statement saying they were devastated by the tragic passing of Diogo Jota. They went on to say, "We request the privacy of Diogo and Andre's family, friends, teammates, and the club staff is respected as they try to come to terms with an unimaginable loss." Jota was a regular in Portugal's national team, and their captain, Cristiano Ronaldo, wrote on social media, "It doesn't make sense. Just now we were together in the national team. You had just got married." Ronaldo sent his condolences to Jota's family, wife and children and added, "I know you will always be with them. Rest in peace, Diego and Andre. We will miss you."
It doesn't make sense. A lot of things don't make sense, but they happen, don't they? But the outpourings of tribute all over the place, politicians, footballers, just extraordinary from all over the world.
I mean, he seemed to have united the entire world, you know. Since news of his passing came out, I think it's quite sad, especially the manner in which it happened. And you know, I understand he was going back to Liverpool with the brother. So he was rushing either to, catch the train or the ferry or something like that when the accident happened. But for me, it's the lessons to learn from his life. Here is a footballer, really, who wasn't the controversial type and was quite gifted. You know, he was such a talented player. And had just won the league with Liverpool. He was also part of Portugal's team that played in the Nations League, that won. You know, and got married few days to his passing. Incredible. It's just, I mean, I think that is what even makes it even more sad. You know, on one end you have glory, you have triumph, and then just a few days later you're dealing with tragedy.
Certainly.
It's just life and its complexities. Really.
Absolutely, and a person, people who knew him from the reports that I've read, he was just a very humble person, a very nice person, just a decent human being,
Indeed.
quite extraordinary.
And I think that explains it. I'm not really surprised with his club, Liverpool's. You know, they've made some pronouncements following his death, including that there are plans to retire the number 20. I understand, but also they've you know, pledged to continue paying his salary for the next 2 years to his family, which I think for me goes to show you how much the club also appreciate the player and his contributions to the team while he was with them. But also, like I said, it tells you the type of person he was, not just on the pitch, but even off the pitch. He was not a controversial type. On the pitch, you know, he's won a lot with the club and has made some very significant contributions to the club's, you know, those, you know, triumph moments we've seen, especially during last season and in the past couple of months.
Absolutely. What a
note. Quite a loss for Liverpool, really.
Exactly. What a note on which to end this program. But here it must end. Thank you very much, Usman.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much, viewers. Until next time, I'm goodbye.